Hey everyone, this is the story of Aaliyah, a young black woman who fought against racism and corruption at the highest levels of a major tech company. She faced hatred, sabotage, and betrayal but never gave up. This is a powerful story about strength, justice, and changing the system from within. If you want to hear more stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our community. Aaliyah James sat alone in her sleek new corner office, the city's glittering skyline a sharp contrast to the storm brewing just beneath her calm exterior. At 26, she had just been named CEO of Millennium Tech, a position many dreamed of, but few could claim, especially someone like her, a young black woman in a boardroom dominated by older white men. Her journey here was marked by relentless determination. She remembered her college days, the late nights spent coding while others partied, the internships where she had to prove herself twice over, and the countless meetings where her ideas were dismissed, not for lack of merit, but because of the color of her skin and the assumptions people made. Her promotion wasn't a gift, it was a hard-earned victory, but whispers and sideways glances followed her everywhere. From the moment the announcement was made, the office corridors buzzed with quiet gossip. She must have slept her way to the top. No way she earned it. It's just politics. She doesn't fit in here. Her deputy managers, all white men, many decades older, barely hid their disdain. Thomas, the CFO, had already dismissed one of her initiatives in a meeting with a patronizing smile. Mark, the head of operations, muttered under his breath about token hires. And Eric, the VP of sales, held secret meetings with other execs behind closed doors. Aaliyah knew the stakes were high. The company was at a crossroads, facing fierce competition and internal complacency. She was determined not just to lead but to reshape the culture, and she wouldn't let racism or sexist attitudes derail her. That evening, she stood by the window, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. She thought about her mother's advice: keep your head high, work harder, and let your success speak. But she also knew that sometimes success wasn't enough. Tomorrow would be another battlefield. The next morning, Aaliyah entered the glass-walled conference room, her heels clicking with authority. Around the table sat her executive team, men who looked at her with skepticism and thinly veiled contempt. "Good morning," she began, voice steady. "Let's get started." Thomas rolled his eyes as she outlined the new strategy to innovate the product line and improve diversity in hiring. "This all sounds very ambitious," Thomas said, "but maybe a bit unrealistic. We have a system that works." Aaliyah held his gaze. "That system is exactly what's holding us back." Mark snorted. "I don't see how a fresh coat of paint will fix broken processes." The tension in the room thickened. She smiled coldly. "It's not about paint, Mark. It's about rebuilding from the foundation." Eric cleared his throat. "Look, I think we all want the company to succeed, but we need to be pragmatic." Aaliyah leaned forward. "Pragmatism isn't an excuse for maintaining the status quo." Her words hung heavy. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others exchanged looks. She knew the battle lines were drawn. The day after her first executive meeting, Aaliyah felt the weight of every pair of eyes in the office. Some looked at her with outright hostility, others with pity, and a few with thinly veiled skepticism. The whispers had already begun, soft but venomous. In the glossy hallways of Millennium Tech, where the walls were lined with portraits of past white CEOs, the murmurs followed her like shadows. "Did you hear? They say she's got connections with the board, nothing more. Someone told me she barely has the experience. She's just a figurehead. Wait till they realize." Behind closed doors, the deputies gathered. Thomas, Mark, and Eric exchanged glances, their conversations laced with frustration and resentment. "She's shaking things up too fast," Thomas said, voice low. "She doesn't understand the culture here," Mark added. Eric, sharper and more cunning, leaned forward. "We need a plan. If we let her steamroll us, it's the end of our influence." They plotted quietly, small moves at first, undermining her decisions, leaking confidential information, spreading rumors of incompetence. The goal was clear: weaken her authority without drawing too much attention. Despite the growing opposition, Aaliyah refused to back down. She spent late nights reviewing reports, learning the company's weak spots, and strategizing. One evening, in the empty conference room, she spoke softly to herself. "They think I'm a mistake, but I'm the change they never saw coming." Her phone buzzed, A text from her mentor. Stay strong. They'll test you more than anyone you've faced before. Aaliyah smiled, steeling herself for the war ahead. By the third week of her tenure as CEO, the atmosphere at Millennium Tech had grown unmistakably hostile. The initial polite nods of acknowledgement had given way to cold stares and curt, clipped responses. In the hallways, employees lowered their voices when Aaliyah passed, and meetings that once buzzed with ideas now simmered with tension. Aaliyah's deputies, Thomas, Mark, and Eric, had united their efforts into a coordinated campaign of undermining. Their tactics were subtle but effective. Emails addressed to Aaliyah were redirected or went unanswered. Important documents mysteriously vanished from shared folders. Rumors spread that her strategies were reckless, that her leadership was a facade supported only by diversity quotas rather than competence. One particularly sharp morning, after an exhausting all-hands meeting, Aaliyah found herself lingering in the sleek kitchen area where a group of senior managers were quietly conversing. "She's just a figurehead," one whispered, glancing around to ensure no one overheard. The board wanted to check a box. They never expected her to actually make decisions. "She's in way over her head," another chimed in. "Just wait. Once the numbers dip, she'll be gone." The words stung, but Aaliyah had learned to wear their contempt like armor. She knew better than to expect acceptance overnight. What disturbed her more was the threat simmering beneath the surface. The real danger was not just disdain, but active sabotage. Back in her office, Aaliyah's phone buzzed. A message from her closest confidant and mentor, Simone. "Watch your back. They're playing dirty." Determined not to be outmaneuvered, Aaliyah spent late nights poring over company data, cross-referencing internal reports, and compiling evidence of mismanagement and corruption tied to some of her own deputies. She realized this was bigger than just personal attacks. It was a battle for control of the entire company. Her plan was twofold. First, to expose the underhanded actions within the executive ranks, and second, to regain the trust of her employees by demonstrating unwavering leadership. One evening, sitting alone with a thick folder of reports, Aaliyah whispered to herself, "This ends now. They want to play games? I'm ready to rewrite the rules." The tension in the office was palpable. Aaliyah knew the opposition was mobilizing, but she was determined to strike first. It started subtly. During a critical board meeting, just as she presented her bold vision for the company's future, Thomas interrupted with a pointed question. "Are you sure these projections are realistic, Aaliyah? They seem optimistic." Aaliyah met his gaze calmly. "I am confident in our data and the team's ability to execute." But Thomas didn't relent. "It's just that in the past, such forecasts have led to disappointment and losses. We must be cautious." Later, whispers began to circulate that Aaliyah was reckless, risking shareholder value for personal ambition. An anonymous memo was leaked to the press, hinting at instability in the company's leadership. Meanwhile, in hushed corners of the office, Mark and Eric escalated their campaign. They subtly sabotaged initiatives, withheld information, and spread rumors questioning her professionalism and integrity. One evening, as Aaliyah stayed late in her office, her phone rang. It was Simone. "There's talk," Simone warned, "that some execs are fabricating stories to get you fired." Aaliyah's jaw tightened. "Let them come. I'm ready." Determined, she began compiling evidence, emails, meeting notes, financial reports, to expose the sabotage and protect her position. The first battle was only beginning. The sun had long set, but the soft glow of Aaliyah's laptop illuminated her office as she sifted through files, reports, and emails. The silence of the building felt heavy, a stark contrast to the storm brewing beneath the polished surface of Millennium Tech. Aaliyah had quickly realized this fight was not just about her promotion. It was about dismantling a deeply entrenched culture that protected power at all costs. The men resisting her represented an old guard unwilling to share authority or recognize talent in someone who didn't fit their mold. Determined, Aaliyah began quietly building alliances. She reached out through anonymous surveys and discreet conversations, connecting with younger employees, women, and minorities who had long felt sidelined. One by one, their stories surfaced. Missed promotions, ignored complaints, whispered slights. These voices became her foundation. Over several late nights, Aaliyah pored over HR reports and internal investigations. She uncovered a disturbing pattern. Incidents of harassment, and bullying, conveniently swept under the rug or dismissed as personality clashes. Several of her deputy managers were implicated in these cover-ups. She meticulously organized the evidence into dossiers, cross-referencing dates, emails, and witness statements. This was ammunition she intended to use carefully but decisively. Meanwhile, the atmosphere in the office grew tenser. Some employees whispered their support, others distanced themselves, fearful of backlash. Aaliyah's reputation was under siege, but her resolve only hardened. During a private dinner with Simone, her trusted mentor and former executive, Aaliyah voiced her fears. "They don't just doubt me professionally," she said, stirring her coffee. "They question my very right to be here." Simone placed a reassuring hand on hers. "That's because they know you threaten their world. But that's a good thing. Change is uncomfortable for them, but necessary for the company." Aaliyah nodded, steeling herself. "I need to be smarter, stronger. Not just for me, but for everyone who's been silenced." Simone smiled. "And you will be. Remember, battles aren't won by rage alone, but by strategy, patience, and unwavering confidence." The road ahead was daunting, but Aaliyah knew one truth above all: she was not alone. The early morning sun cast long shadows over Millennium Tech's towering headquarters as Aaliyah prepared for what could be the most pivotal moment of her career. The boardroom awaited, a glass-walled arena where decades of power, influence, and secrets converged. Today, she was not just the new CEO, she was a crusader armed with truth. Her heart pounded as she entered the room, the polished table stretching before her, surrounded by the company's most powerful figures. Many were older white men who had either doubted her from the start or resented her presence. Thomas sat with a smug expression, Mark avoided eye contact, and Eric's jaw was tight. Clearing her throat, Aaliyah began her presentation. The projector illuminated the screen behind her with timelines, emails, and witness statements meticulously compiled over weeks. "This is not a personal vendetta," she said firmly. "This is an urgent call to address systemic issues that threaten the integrity and future of Millennium Tech." She detailed incidents of harassment, a senior manager dismissing a female employee's complaint as overreaction, another deputy manipulating performance reviews to sabotage colleagues, and the intentional leaking of confidential information designed to discredit her leadership. As she spoke, the room's atmosphere shifted. Whispers died down, eyes widened. Thomas tried to interrupt. "These claims are exaggerated, possibly fabricated." Aaliyah met his gaze unwaveringly. "I have corroborating evidence, emails, recordings, and testimonies. This is not opinion." Mark leaned forward, voice strained. "If we proceed based on accusations alone, we risk destroying reputations unjustly." "Which is why," Aaliyah replied, "an independent investigation is necessary to ensure transparency and justice." The board was silent, some nodding slowly, others visibly uneasy. After a tense pause, the chairman spoke. "We will initiate a formal inquiry. Pending the outcome, the implicated executives will be placed on administrative leave." Thomas and Mark exchanged glances, their power momentarily curtailed. Later that day, as Aaliyah returned to her office, her phone buzzed. A message from Simone read, "You've turned the tide. Now keep the momentum." Aaliyah exhaled deeply, feeling the weight of both victory and the battles yet to come. The independent investigation was underway, and the atmosphere at Millennium Tech had shifted dramatically. The once covert resistance now faced public scrutiny, and whispers of fear replaced those of contempt. Aaliyah felt a cautious optimism but remained vigilant. In the weeks that followed, testimonies poured in. Employees who had long been silenced began to speak out, recounting stories of harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. The truth was coming to light, piece by painful piece. Thomas and Mark, now on administrative leave, attempted to rally support among some board members, insisting on their innocence and framing themselves as victims of a politically motivated witch hunt. But their efforts faltered against the mounting evidence and growing calls for accountability. Meanwhile, Aaliyah continued to steer the company forward, implementing new policies to foster inclusivity and transparency. She held town halls where employees could voice concerns anonymously, promising a culture where everyone's voice mattered. One afternoon, as she walked through the office, a young woman approached her timidly. "Thank you," she said softly, "for standing up for us." Aaliyah smiled warmly. This is just the beginning. Together, we'll make this company a place where everyone can thrive. The announcement from the board echoed through Millennium Tech like a thunderclap. After weeks of tense anticipation, the official investigation report had finally been released, and it confirmed what many had suspected, yet feared to voice openly. Senior management figures, including Thomas, Mark, and Eric, were implicated in a series of misconducts ranging from harassment and discrimination to outright sabotage of company projects. The board's statement was unequivocal. Millennium Tech condemns all forms of harassment, discrimination, and unethical behavior. The company is committed to fostering an inclusive, safe, and transparent workplace. Effective immediately, the implicated individuals have been terminated, and a comprehensive review of corporate policies will be implemented. Inside the office, reactions were mixed but mostly relieved. Employees who had lived in silence for years began to breathe easier. The oppressive tension that had hung over the building lifted, replaced by a cautious hope. Aaliyah immediately set to work. She initiated a series of diversity and inclusion workshops, mandatory for all employees, aiming to cultivate empathy and awareness across every level of the organization. These sessions were led by experts in social justice and workplace equity, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. She also created anonymous channels for employees to report grievances safely, assuring confidentiality and swift action. Town halls became a regular fixture, allowing open dialogue between leadership and staff. One afternoon, during a particularly emotional town hall, a young woman approached Aaliyah after the meeting. "Thank you for listening," she said softly, eyes glistening. "I never thought I'd feel safe speaking up here." Aaliyah smiled, feeling the weight of those words. This is just the beginning. Change takes time, but together, we'll get there. The path was far from smooth. Resistance still lingered in pockets, whispers of resentment, subtle acts of defiance. But the tide was turning. Late one evening, Aaliyah's phone rang. It was Marco, an old college friend and now a senior executive at a rival tech firm. "I've been following the news," he said with a hint of admiration. "You're shaking things up. It's impressive." Aaliyah chuckled softly. "It's a battle every day, but worth it." "Keep going," Marco encouraged. "The industry needs leaders like you." Their conversation lifted her spirits. Despite the obstacles, Aaliyah felt stronger, more determined than ever. She gazed out the window at the city lights sparkling below. Millennium Tech was no longer just a company resisting change. It was becoming a beacon, a place where talent and integrity could thrive regardless of race, gender, or background. And Aaliyah was leading the way. Despite the progress Aaliyah had made, the road to real change was far from smooth. Some employees, loyal to the old guard, still resisted her leadership. Whispered criticisms and subtle acts of defiance persisted in corners of the office. One morning, Aaliyah discovered that a critical project proposal she had personally overseen was missing key data, sabotaged in a way that could delay its approval. She confronted her team, but the atmosphere was tense and defensive. It was clear the wounds from past power struggles hadn't fully healed. Outside the office, industry competitors were watching closely. Some skeptical of the upheaval at Millennium Tech, rumors spread that the company was unstable, weakening its market position. But Aaliyah refused to back down. She doubled down on transparency, holding more frequent meetings, involving employees in decision-making, and celebrating small victories openly. At home, the stress sometimes weighed heavily. Late nights blurred into early mornings, and the pressure to prove herself as a Black woman leading a major corporation was relentless. Yet, in moments of quiet reflection, Aaliyah reminded herself of why she fought: for those silenced, for those overlooked, and for the future she believed in. Months had passed since Aaliyah took the helm at Millennium Tech, and the landscape of the company had transformed in ways few could have predicted. The very culture that once resisted her presence was now shifting toward openness, collaboration, and mutual respect. Though challenges remained, the company was on a new trajectory, one fueled by diversity and inclusion, with Aaliyah leading the charge. Financial reports reflected this change. The latest quarter's earnings surpassed expectations, driven by innovative projects that flourished in the renewed environment. Employee satisfaction surveys showed a remarkable increase in morale and trust toward leadership. For the first time in years, Millennium Tech was not just surviving, but thriving. Aaliyah's leadership caught the attention of the broader industry. She was invited to speak at the prestigious Global Tech Leadership Summit, a gathering of influential executives and innovators. Standing under the bright lights of the conference hall, she shared her story candidly. "I faced resistance, doubt, and outright hostility," she told the audience. "But I refused to let those barriers define me." Diversity isn't just a metric, it's a source of strength. When we embrace different perspectives, we create companies that are more creative, resilient, and just. Her words resonated deeply, earning standing ovations and sparking conversations long overdue in boardrooms worldwide. Back at Millennium Tech, the board reaffirmed their full support, extending Aaliyah's contract and empowering her to continue the reforms she had championed. The deputies who once plotted against her were replaced by leaders who shared her vision and values, committed to fostering an inclusive and accountable workplace. One evening, after a particularly successful board meeting, Aaliyah stepped out onto the rooftop terrace overlooking the city skyline. The lights twinkled like stars, each one a symbol of possibility. She allowed herself a moment to breathe, reflecting on the journey, the battles, the sacrifices, the victories. But deep inside, she knew this was just the beginning. Her fight had reshaped a company and sparked a broader movement toward equality in the tech industry. There was still work to do, but she was ready. With unwavering determination, Aaliyah looked toward the future, a future where leadership was defined not by who you are, but by the impact you make.